Good morning, this is Michelle with Purposeful Happiness, and I joined the Ephemera, and I'm sure that's not how you say it. And I decided to do day 5, which was the napkin image and tags, and I decided to do a vineyard theme with the napkins that I had. And so the supplies that I used were layered tags, just some scrap paper, a couple tags, and pulled a couple of napkins out of my stash to use. And these I'll just Mod Podge on. And I cut down a wine cork to use for a little bit of embellishments on this tag. So to begin with, I just start making the tag. So cut my middle tag to size. And I want it to be layered, so I wanted some space to be in between and visible. And here what I started to do was get the napkins ready by taking out the back of the napkins, and it has 2 layers per napkin of a white backing. So just go ahead and remove those, and I cut out a big part of this video to make it shorter of some of the steps, so I went ahead and took those off. This napkin, I want to use the brick pattern that's in the background, and I didn't need the flowers, so I'm just cutting this down to use on one of my layered tags. So I just continue to prep the supplies that I was using for these 3 tags. And some of it was hit or miss, and I spent a lot of time fiddling around with things trying to get it just right. So part of the challenge is certainly thinking through a project as you're doing it. And so that's why some of the video's been edited out, as I just sat there and fiddled with pieces to figure out what I wanted. So I'm cutting this down. I want to use the plain piece of this napkin as a background for the main tag. And then the letters and the Paris stamp in the center I'll use as well, but at a later time. So just go ahead and Mod Podge your napkin onto the tag. This would be my base tag. And as you can see, I didn't use any of the image. I just used the plain pieces. So what I'm going to do with these is I'm going to try to roll up to look like layered tags. So I'm going to wet them and then tear holes in them to make it look like you're peeking inside of some torn paper or a wall or whatever I can come up with since I'm using the brick. I'm just using the water to try to break down the paper here because I would like the paper to roll. I didn't want just a hole. This paper turned out to be a little bit thin, and I was trying to add water at the same time. As you can see here in a minute, I added way too much water to the thin paper. It took much longer to dry when you add this much water, and I would not do that again. I would just take a little paintbrush and make the water spots on that paper. So I'm tearing out the holes here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to tear the top tag, and the tag that goes underneath it, I will roll the paper up onto this tag to give it the dimensional look that I'm looking for. So really I just need the hole to be big enough that it will fit the image on this napkin, and I just want this little image that says Paris on it. That's all I'm looking for in this particular tag piece. So I just continue to manipulate the paper until I get the size that I want. And here I will just start to roll the paper, tear it, and I'm just using a thin paintbrush to roll the edges. And it's okay if the paper tears off when I Mod Podge the napkin on or the pieces together. I can use the Mod Podge to help hold these rolled pieces on there, because without the rolled pieces I won't have the dimensional effect that I'm looking for. And this was probably the most fiddly part of the whole project, is trying to get this the way that I wanted it to look. And so that's what you see here, is just manipulating the tag and double checking size to make sure the image will come through properly. And so what I'll do is I'll just lift this top tag off, and it, like I said, it's okay if the paper tears. I'll just reattach it with some of the Mod Podge when it's time. So because I used too much water, this tag is having a hard time drying. So it's taken me a little bit longer to work with. So I'm just going to Mod Podge my brick layer of that first napkin over the top of this so that it looks like we're coming through a brick wall. Nothing too fancy here, just layering and going. So I put good coverage on there for this napkin. And I just put the whole piece on top and started to adhere it. I sped this part up a little bit since most everybody knows how to Mod Podge their napkin. And as you can see, I lost a piece of the brick, the lines in here. So I was trying to figure out how with this second tag I could maybe capture the brick. But it's okay if it doesn't come all the way through. I was trying for a little more dimensional piece, but that's okay. I could have taken a watercolor pencil or an outline, maybe a gray pencil, and darkened these lines, but I chose not to do that with this particular tag. It would be worth trying again if I wanted the brick to stand out better. And I'm just going to poke a hole right through where I had the tag piece there. None of this is exact. It's all very rough. As you can see, there's pieces of the napkin still off the top of it. And just use your finger and go in here and smooth it out and create the piece that you're looking for. I'm just going to poke a hole where the tag is so that it stays open. Okay, so here we'll just go ahead and trim off our original base tag. The napkin is dry mostly from the Mod Podge. And so I'm just going to clean this up a little bit. I'm using old scissors since the Mod Podge isn't quite dry so that I don't get scissors all, or my Mod Podge all over the scissors. So they could be a little sharper. It's taking me a little bit to go around and clean this up. So I really like the look of this napkin on the back of the tag and just poking another hole up in the hole punch that's already there. And so now what I need to do is figure out how to layer these together and just see the peaking image of the parasign. So I'm going to distress the edges before I put it together. This doesn't take too long. It's just more preference. I've really enjoyed watching Luize's and 49 Dragonflies videos the last couple of days, so I had to jump in and try my own. This is definitely not a Christmas themed tag, but when given two pieces to work with or two materials, sometimes you come up with something else. I have no idea why this video is spinning in a circle, and I have attempted to edit it out and could not quite figure out what I had done to get there. But I'm just taking a little bit of water on the paintbrush to break down the napkin so that I can tear this image out and make a clean piece of it. Again, I apologize for the spinning video. There was nothing very profound that required a spinning video at that section. So just carefully work with your fingers the napkin pieces you want out. This will be the piece that I cut out with my fingers. I want it to look a little torn, as I just want the image and the words. And then I'll take the scissors and see if I can't cut through some of the pieces of the napkin. There's a number on here, and there are some French words that I'll use, and I just cut those out. So just cleaning up a little bit of the edges to get ready to begin layering these tags. And here's where I will take the tags to see that the placement is good. If I need to make the hole larger, This is the last piece before I put them all together. So we're just going to Mod Podge the back of this first tag onto our second tag. This was a little tricky. The tag was still a little damp, and as you know, Mod Podge reacts to water, so I wouldn't recommend working with the Mod Podge on a piece of wet paper, but for this project, it worked out okay. And now I'm just going to place it together and get the seal. So what I do here, after making sure all the edges are down, is I'll go back in and Mod Podge the curled up paper from underneath to stick it down and create a solid piece. That's all I'll do. I'll just wet it a little bit, and then I'll start rolling the paper with my fingers and putting it back together. And that will hold, and once it dries, that paper is not going anywhere. So it's a nice torn tag look. Just measure again. So I found this background a little too dark to use that image on, and I wanted it to pop a little bit more. So I'm taking some of the leftover brick paper or napkin that I had, and I'm going to layer it underneath just so I can lighten up that background a little bit. And I could have used some gesso or something else, but since I had the napkin there already, I decided to go ahead and just lay this down. As you can see, it just brings it much brighter. So I've already Mod Podged it down, and we'll see what it looks like. That was more what I was looking for, a muted color. And we'll go ahead and put down our main image. And here we're just going to Mod Podge that second tag onto the base layer. Again, very simple, but if anything, this was just more fiddly than complicated. And I'm just using a Mod Podge mat. And we'll just set this down right in the middle. And I want to do a few finishing touches on this tag. I think this is my favorite part, is once you have the structure together, you can come in and embellish it in a little bit new ways or different ways. So I'm just going to distress the top tag to blend in a little bit more with the two tags underneath it. So I'm taking the Distress Ink and I am putting it along the edges and over the middle of this particular tag. And again, if I lose some of the gray from the brick images, it's okay. You can still see a little bit of the brick outline if you're close. So here I'm just taking a few extra pieces of the napkin that I cut, and here's the one with the number. I think it says number 1628, and I wanted some torn edges. I don't want it to look cut necessarily, so just going to lay that down. And as you know, you just use what you can while you're working with it. I decided this piece would look good on the rolled piece of napkin coming out of the middle tag, so I'm just going to carefully tap that on and then roll it around. And just a few more little pieces. So I pulled the cork out and I cut a small piece of the cork off the front, and I cut the bottom just with an X-Acto knife. So it says 2015 on the bottom tag, a really thin circle. Then the top is just the name of the vineyard or some writing that was on the cork. And so I just want to make sure all the elements make sense in scale when I'm working with these other words. So I still want a little more to pop out. So what I'm going to do is use this gold Martha Stewart gel paint. And I'm going to paint the area where the paper rolled to give it a little bit more effect here. And then after I get all of this section painted, I'll go through and just really lightly dry brush this gold over the edges of the main tag or the top tag, and just a little bit on the front. This really did add something extra that it was unexpected, and I really enjoyed the effect of this gold paint. You can do a wine colored paint since it's a vineyard type of theme. So the possibilities are endless. But that's what I just worked on here, was 2 or 3 layers because this napkin was still somewhat damp. And here you'll see I'm just highlighting inside of the first tag just to give it a little bit more shimmer. And again, I'm not using much paint, very little, just to brush around. And it's very random, just wherever you think it could use a little extra gold paint, just throw it on there. This is not a tag I would have normally come up with, so this challenge was fun in terms of trying to come up with something new and using what you have on hand. I will link the challenge below in case you haven't started it. Pick a day or two, try the challenge yourself, and what I've decided is I have to do the challenge a day ahead of Luize and 49 Dragonflies, as when I see their projects, they turn out so amazing that I'm afraid that mine won't, or I'll take some of their idea and replicate it, and I didn't want to do that. So here I'm just taking a black watercolor pencil, and then I'll go in and just wet the edges to make it look like there's a shadow behind the second tag, the middle tag. And this will just add a little bit of I guess another dimension to make this tag look like it's deeper than it is. I've enjoyed working with this black watercolor pencil. It doesn't take much and it's really easy to use. And so now we can go ahead and adhere the cork pieces, and I'm just using my Fabri-Tac to put the cork down. And the cork was not as hard as I thought it would be to cut down, so I will likely use more of these in my work from here forward. Another benefit of the challenge, learning something new and putting in new elements. I decided I wanted a little bit of shadow around the 2015, so I'm just going to do the watercolor pencil again and create a little bit of a shadow. And that is the end of it. I have 2 tags now, and I will post close-ups on my Instagram and Facebook page so you can see a little more closely how the gold works. And I appreciate your time, and thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy the challenge as much as I do.